friends. Today, we take you back to the year 1815, to a legendary battle that changed the politics of Europe forever. This is the Battle of Waterloo, the battlefield where the fate of the great commander Napoleon Bonaparte was sealed. It wasn't just a battle, it was the end of an era, and the beginning of a new age. It was a decisive moment that changed the course of history, a turning point whose impact can still be felt today. The Battle of Waterloo didn't just reshape Europe, it redrew the balance of power across the entire world. The Battle of Waterloo proved to be one of the most crucial turning points in European history. It was a conflict that left deep marks on the political map of Europe for centuries to come. The importance of this battle cannot be underestimated. It truly shaped the destiny of a continent. This battle was fought in the year 1815, a year of change and revolution across Europe. It marked the final fall of a man who had held an entire continent in the grip of his power for nearly 2 decades. This battle marked the inevitable end of Napoleon Bonaparte's glorious, yet controversial reign. After this war, Napoleon's star finally faded, and with it, the dream of his vast empire shattered forever. This decisive battle was fought near the town of Waterloo, in what is now modern-day Belgium. It was a small, quiet village, but on that day, it was written into the pages of history forever. Here, on this very field, the fate of thousands of soldiers was about to be decided. This battle changed the political landscape of Europe forever. The balance of power that had stood for centuries was shattered, giving rise to new nations and new alliances. It was an event that set Europe on an entirely new path, one that would shape the destiny of the continent for generations to come. The Battle of Waterloo left a lasting mark on the world. Its consequences reshaped not only Europe, but also the global political, social, and economic order. Even today, this battle remains a powerful lesson in military strategy and leadership, studied by historians and generals alike across the globe. Napoleon Bonaparte was renowned for his extraordinary military genius. His unmatched strategies, fearless leadership, and the incredible speed of his armies made him seem invincible on the battlefield. The mere mention of his name was enough to strike fear into the hearts of his enemies. Through his vast conquests, Napoleon brought most of Europe under his command. His armies marched triumphantly from one nation to another, crushing empires and reshaping kingdoms in their path. His dominance seemed unstoppable, and his ambition knew no bounds. Napoleon had established his dominion over nearly all of Europe. For decades, his power shone like the blazing sun, turning France into a global force with no equal. Every decision he made seemed to reshape the destiny of Europe. But as Napoleon's power grew, so did the fear across Europe. His aggressive ambitions and relentless expansion united his enemies against him. The great powers of Europe formed a formidable alliance, determined that Napoleon must be stopped, once and for all. This coalition would soon become the harbinger of his downfall. Among the key members of this alliance were Britain, Prussia, and the Netherlands. These were the nations that had long resisted Napoleon's domination, standing firm against his relentless ambition for expansion. Their united determination would soon bear fruit, setting the stage for one of the most decisive battles in history. Alongside them, other great powers of Europe also joined the cause. Austria, Russia, and several smaller states took up arms against Napoleon, united under one purpose: to liberate Europe from his iron grip. It was a coalition born out of fear, resistance, and the hope for freedom. Napoleon's victories had turned him into a towering figure, a man larger than life. Yet, his immense power had also united his enemies against him. This was not merely a military conflict. It was an ideological war, where the monarchies of Europe rose to challenge the very man who had once carried the banner of revolution. The Grand Alliance forced Napoleon to fight on multiple fronts, stretching his armies thin and draining his strength. His supply lines grew longer, his resources began to dwindle, and the once unstoppable empire started to crack under pressure. This growing strain set the stage for what would become the Battle of Waterloo, the final chapter of Napoleon's legend. The battle began on June 18, 1815, a day forever etched in history. As the morning mist lifted over the fields of Waterloo, two mighty armies stood face to face, their fate and the fate of Europe hanging in the balance. Every soldier knew that before the sun would set, destiny would choose its victor. Napoleon himself rode on horseback, leading his army into battle with unshakable confidence. His eyes burned with the fire of victory, and his face reflected the same determination that had carried him to triumph in countless battles before. To his soldiers, he was more than a commander. He was a symbol of courage and hope. Napoleon launched a fierce and calculated assault, aiming to crush the Allied forces with a decisive early strike. His strategy had always been one of relentless aggression, never allowing the enemy a moment to recover. This time was no different. He intended to end the battle before it truly began. The battlefield roared with the thunder of cannons. Explosions echoed across the fields, and the very ground trembled beneath the soldiers' feet. Fire and smoke filled the air as cannonballs blazed through the sky like flaming meteors of death. It was a scene powerful enough to shake even the bravest of hearts. The battlefield echoed with the cries of soldiers, the screams of the wounded and the fading whispers of the dying. The air was heavy with pain and despair, painting a haunting picture of humanity caught in the merciless grip of war. It was a place where life and death danced together in the shadow of chaos. At first, Napoleon's forces seized the advantage. Their attacks were so fierce that the Allied troops were forced to fall back. The French soldiers fought with their legendary courage and fiery spirit, and for a moment, victory seemed within their grasp. The battlefield echoed with the roar of triumph, as if destiny itself favored Napoleon once again. But as the day wore on, the tide of battle began to turn. The Allied forces regained their ground, standing firm against the relentless French assaults. What had once seemed like a certain victory now became a desperate struggle for survival. Every passing moment changed the course of the war, and fate began to shift away from Napoleon's grasp. Meanwhile, the Prussian army, led by Field Marshal Blücher, arrived on the battlefield, a moment that would change everything. Their sudden appearance breathed new life into the Allied forces and plunged Napoleon's army into chaos and confusion. It was the unexpected twist that turned hope into despair. The arrival of the Prussian forces strengthened the Allied army, giving them fresh energy and unstoppable momentum. Their reinforcements pressed hard against Napoleon's weary troops, halting the French advance that had once seemed unstoppable. It was at this moment that Napoleon realized he would have to rethink his entire strategy. Napoleon found himself surrounded by the Allied forces. On one side were Wellington's troops, and on the other, Blücher's Prussian army. His soldiers were forced to fight on two fronts, a difficult situation for any army. It was a moment when Napoleon realized his mistake. He had underestimated Blücher's arrival, and now he was paying a heavy price for it. The battlefield was turning against him. He deployed his best troops to break out of the encirclement, but the pressure from the Allies was overwhelming. His soldiers were exhausted, and their morale was fading. It was a battle where every soldier fought until his last breath. The fighting was intense and brutal. Thousands of soldiers on both sides were sacrificing their lives. It was a battle without mercy, where every soldier was fighting for his survival. Thousands of soldiers were killed, and the battlefield was covered with bodies. It was a scene horrifying enough to shake any human heart. Rivers of blood were flowing, and the dance of death continued all around. The sky turned dark with clouds. During the battle, the weather too played its part, as thick clouds hid the sunlight. It was a scene that only added to the horror of the war. The rain turned the battlefield into a quagmire. Movement became difficult for both horses and soldiers, creating additional challenges for Napoleon's army. The mud slowed down their advance. Napoleon's ambition was finally reduced to dust. All his victories, his strategies, and his power became meaningless that day. It was the moment when a great commander met his downfall. His army suffered a crushing defeat, and he faced a humiliating loss. Napoleon's forces scattered, and their morale was completely shattered. It was a defeat that destroyed all his dreams. His defeat was not just military but also psychological. He had lost the confidence of his soldiers, and doubts began to rise about his leadership. It was the moment when the sun of his greatness finally set. Napoleon made his final attempt, but he failed. His guards, once considered invincible, were forced to surrender before the Allied forces. It was a sight no one had ever imagined. His defeat ushered Europe into a new era. The fear of Napoleon was finally over, and the people of Europe breathed a sigh of relief. It was a defeat that changed the course of history. In this war, Napoleon's strategy had several flaws. He underestimated the strength of the Allied forces and ignored the arrival of Blücher. These were the mistakes that cost him dearly. The exhaustion of his army and the lack of supplies also became major reasons for his defeat. The long wars had drained his soldiers, and they no longer had the strength to keep fighting. The Battle of Waterloo proved that no power lasts forever. Every rise meets a fall, and every ruler must one day relinquish their throne. It was a lesson that history itself taught. After this defeat, Napoleon was captured and exiled to a remote island. It was the most tragic chapter of his life, where a great conqueror was forced to live in captivity. He was sent to the island of St. Helena, where he spent the remainder of his life. It was an isolated island, cut off from the world, and escape was impossible. This was the final decree of his fate. The Battle of Waterloo proved to be a pivotal moment in European history. It shifted the balance of power and brought an end to Napoleon's domination. It was an event that set Europe on an entirely new path. This battle marked the beginning of a new era for Europe. A long cycle of wars that had lasted for centuries came to an end, and a period of peace and stability began across the continent. It was a change that everyone had been waiting for. After this battle, several new states were established in Europe, and old borders were redrawn. It was a process that completely reshaped the political map of the continent. The Battle of Waterloo gave rise to a saying, "Everyone meets their Waterloo." It means that every person at some point in life faces a decisive defeat. This expression is still used today. This battle serves as an important case study in military strategy, leadership, and human determination. It taught us how even a great power can fall due to its mistakes. The Battle of Waterloo sent a clear message to the world. No person or power is invincible forever. Pride and arrogance inevitably lead to downfall. It was a lesson that remains relevant even today. After this battle, Europe experienced a long period of peace, known as the Concert of Europe. It was an era in which the major powers worked together to prevent further wars. The Battle of Waterloo still holds an important place in the pages of history. It was a battle that sealed the fate of a great commander and pushed Europe toward a new future. What are your thoughts on this historic event? Be sure to share your opinion in the comments below. Like the video and make sure to subscribe to the channel, then hit the bell icon so you can be the first to watch our new videos.